Three, two, one. Welcome to the Raw Prospect Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Amy Nixon, college student at Bethany College, college golfer. And joining me from Austin, Texas, the Stat King himself, as always, Michael Wing. What is up?
What's up? Our first episode of October. And you know what October means. We have basketball nearing right around the corner in just a couple weeks. We have postseason baseball that we are going to be talking about for a majority of the episode today. And we are into the thick of the NFL and college football seasons. So today we're going to be previewing each of the four baseball division series that start tomorrow. A wild card game is going on right now, the Dodgers and the Cardinals, the National League wild card game. That is tied at 1 right now in the top of the ninth inning. It is on TBS. The Cardinals have a runner on second base with 2 outs, a full count, to see if Kenley Jansen can get it to the bottom of the ninth. The Dodgers will have a chance to walk it off. We'll see what happens. But, man, has it been an exciting, sort of disappointing from my perspective, but an exciting, nevertheless, past 48 hours. But, yeah, let's just get into this. We have a lot to talk about, and I'm excited to talk about it.
And I'm excited to be back on this Zoom call here. We haven't had a YouTube episode with video in a long time, it feels like. So excited to get that back out to you all today. And yeah, let's just get into this baseball. I'm excited. Let's do it. Which game do you want to start?
You want to start in the National League or the American League? It's up to
Let's
you.
start American League. Sox and Rays.
Okay, let's do it.
I think that's the best series, in my opinion. Wow. Well,
so
first, okay, you can go ahead.
You can go first. No, you go first. I want to hear.
First things first for me is, well, the Sox. I mean, you see it so many times. Teams like the Red Sox winning a wild card game, picking up momentum going into the NLDS and pulling off an upset. You see it all the time in baseball. But all year we talked about, when we did talk about baseball, we talked about the importance of being able to have a deep pitching bullpen. And the Rays have that, I mean, as good as anyone in baseball. And with the season lengthening back up to 162 games, I feel like that's the reason they are where they are. Obviously, they have the hitting lineup and they have the playoff experience as well, but the pitching is what I look at with the Rays. That's what's going to carry them to the World Series if they end up getting it there. So I think the Rays have as good a chance as any to make it to the World Series out of the AL, just simply because I think the Yankees may have been their toughest matchup in terms of the head-to-head, just because of the lineup the Yankees put out offensively. It would have been fun to see that lineup against this pitching group, but we'll settle for this. I'm rambling a little bit.
The Tampa Bay Rays were in the World Series last year. They played the Los Angeles Dodgers, ended up losing, and I think it was 6 games in a shortened season. So say what you want about that, but that was what it was. They have a bottom 5 payroll in baseball, only at like 60 or 70 million total. So it's amazing what they've been able to accomplish over the past couple seasons here. They won 100 games for the first time ever in their franchise history. They went 162 over the course of the regular season, dominated the American League East. They beat up on the lowly Baltimore Orioles, which is a big part of how they fattened up that record and got it to where it is. You have to beat up on the bad teams if you want to get this sort of home field advantage that they have now as the top seed in the American League. Kevin Cash is a great manager. He's one of the best in the business. He knows how to manipulate and match up against different lineups. And that's really what the Rays pride themselves on. They're not really the type of team that you typically see that's going to send a starting pitcher out there for 6-7 innings in the postseason and expect them to go that length and strike out, that many batters as you would expect maybe a Max Scherzer or a Garrett Cole or even a Jacob deGrom, some of the top aces in baseball. The Rays don't play that type of style. They have starters that work and match up against different lineups. And Cash really doesn't really force his starters to go the distance. They have a deep bullpen, as deep as anybody. Everyone out of that bullpen, and believe me, I know because they've had the Yankees numbered over the past couple seasons, especially this bullpen. They have lefties to match up against lefties, and they have righties to match up against righties. Everyone throws 98 to 100 miles per hour. So I think the advantage here is going to go to the Rays. Number one, they have home field advantage, and it's really hard to play in that dome down there in St. Petersburg, the Trop. That's a tough place to play, especially in the postseason. And now they're going to have fans at the games, as opposed to last season when they did not. The Rays, even though they don't have any stars offensively, as do the Red Sox, they hit a lot of home runs. They don't have any household names, but they hit a lot of home runs. And they have a balanced lineup. They have guys who hit left and right-handed. So it's really hard to match up against this lineup that hits a lot of home runs. And they're great defensively. They're really sound on defense. So I think the deep bullpen, Kevin Cash as manager, the home field advantage in this lineup, their situational hitting, their situational defense, they don't make any errors, they don't beat themselves, gives them the advantage not only in the series, but I think going forward as the playoffs progress to get to the World Series for a second straight season. But that being said, Boston has really kind of overachieved. This is supposed to be sort of a rebuilding year for the Red Sox. But they really sort of surprised people, as they did a couple of years ago when they went on to win the World Series. They beat my Yankees soundly last night in the American League wildcard game. They got great pitching from Nathan Eovaldi. The question for the Red Sox, though, is their bullpen. Is it deep enough to go head-to-head with the Rays? I just don't think it is. But I do think the Red Sox have the talent and the big-name hitters to get this series to go 4 or 5 games. Because remember, the division series is only best of 5. But I give the edge to the Rays just because I know their bullpen is deeper and I can trust that their pitching is going to get it done. Whereas with the Red Sox, I just don't know that all of their starters can go the distance because they have to, because the bullpen is a weakness for Boston. So that's sort of my forecast for this series. I think the Rays are going to win it in probably 4 games. If I had to guess, 3 games to 1. I think the Red Sox get a game at Fenway. But yeah, I just think the Rays are the deeper and better team. But the Red Sox have done this in the past. They get hot, and anything can happen, especially with another great manager in Alex Cora. So I'm excited to watch this, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I love seeing teams really in any sport that push the game forward and try out new ways to get an advantage. And with what the Rays are doing, I mean, what we know in playoff baseball, it's all about being able to throw a perfect pitch when you absolutely need it. And having this deep of a pitching bullpen and just pitching group in general, I think is going to bode for really huge success this postseason, but we'll see what happens.
Right. Okay. The other American League series that I think, in my opinion, is the most intriguing, or is going to be the most fun to watch, at least, is the Houston Astros. They're going to host the up-and-coming, young, talented Chicago White Sox. I think this is going to be a great series, but I'll let you give your thoughts on it first.
Well, the White Sox, I mean, they didn't per se come out of nowhere, but they weren't expected to be as good as they are. That's for sure. Their lineup is really talented, though. Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez. I mean, they have guys on their team that can hit. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't watched this team play. I've watched the Astros a bit over the last few years in the playoffs, and we know what they're capable of. We know that they have the playoff experience. So it's just going to be interesting to see whether the young team can overcome that. I mean, they have really good pitching as well. I mean, they have Lance Lynn, Luis Giolito. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. But
Giolito. Correct.
Yeah, I mean, if those guys can perform to the star level that they've been playing all year, I mean, this series could easily go 5 games.
Yeah, this series is going to be great. I have a feeling it's going to end up going the distance. 5 games just feels like the right amount. Mm-hmm. But I will say this. I do think the Houston Astros pose the biggest threat to the Tampa Bay Rays in the American League to go to the World Series. First of all, the Astros during the regular season had a top 3 offense. I'll say that for sure. But you could argue that they had the best offense in the regular season. When the offense is at full throttle for Houston, they feature one of the most well-balanced attacks of teams in the postseason, if not the best. They hit for average. They don't strike out. They have one of the lowest strikeout rates in baseball. They have a balanced lineup, which is so critical in the playoffs because you don't want the opposing team to be able to match up certain pitchers against your lineup if you have like 6, 7 righties in a row. The Tampa Bay Rays are great at matching up their bullpen, as I said earlier, against opposing lineup because they know their tendencies and they know that certain pitchers in their bullpen can just easily mow down a lane of consecutive right-handed batters and left-handed batters. So, but Houston, they hit at home. They hit on the road. Their home road splits are pretty much even. It doesn't really matter where they're playing. They have experience. They hit with runners in scoring position, which is another critical key to winning in October. They have power hitters, but they're not reliant on the home run ball to score. And their lineup's deep. Their lineup balances patience and aggression, which you need to have a good balance of. You need to be able to work pitchers deep into counts. You need to be able to get, see 5, 6 pitches per plate appearance because that works the starters' pitch count up and gets them out of the game faster. I'm trying to explain this in the most simple way possible for those of you who don't watch baseball or just aren't really familiar with these terms that we use to kind of analyze the game. But I mean, you know all the names, especially if you live in Texas and you're an Astros fan. Alex Bregman, the new DH and young star of this Astros team, Yordan Alvarez. Huge power hitter right in the middle of that lineup. Carlos Correa, still a leader on this team. One of the best shortstops we've seen in a long time. You have, of course, Altuve at second base. And then Kyle Tucker is another young gun in that outfield. Great defender, Gold Glove type defender, and he hits for power. I believe there's a stat out there. He has one of the highest OPSs, on base plus slugging percentage, in the entire playoffs of the remaining players left. So this lineup is balanced. They hit for power. They hit with runners in scoring positions. They have another great manager in Dusty Baker, who I think has the advantage over Tony La Russa. And their pitching is once again really good. They no longer have Garrett Cole. They no longer have Justin Verlander. He's been hurt all season. But they have a deep rotation that features Zach Greinke, an experienced starter who's been there, done that. Lance McCullers, he's been virtually unhittable lately. He's going to start game 1 tomorrow. Batters are hitting 144 against his curveball and 148 against his slider. So he's a great breaking ball. Jose Urquidy, Framber Valdez are also two other guys. So they just have a solid pitching staff. They ranked 5th in the American League this season. And they have you could argue, the most balanced offensive attack there is left in this postseason. And they have about as much experience, aside from maybe the Dodgers, who might not even be left standing after tonight, left in this postseason. So I favor Houston here. But I will say this about Chicago. Quick note about Chicago, and then I'll stop talking. Their pitching staff is awesome. Their bullpen is full of flamethrowers. Aside from the Rays, I don't know you can find a more of the teams left in the American League. They're right behind the Rays in terms of bullpen. Michael Kopech, Aaron Bummer, Garrett Crochet, Craig Kimball, Liam Hendricks. I mean, those are 5 really, really good relievers, 5 flamethrowers that if their starters can get 5, 4, 5, 6 innings, solid innings out of guys like Lance Lynn, and you said Lucas Giolito, who's been an ace in years past, that bullpen's scary. And I do think they have a slight starting pitching advantage over the Astros. But I just think when it all comes down to it, the White Sox are a young team. They didn't really perform all that well against the really good teams during the regular season. They really just beat up on what was a weak division with teams like the Twins, the Royals, the Detroit Tigers. They really just beat up on their division, and they ran away with their division, which is why they're here. And they didn't really perform well against the big-time teams like the Astros and the Yankees and the Red Sox. But they're young, and anything can happen. But I just think the experience and the balance for the Astros will get it done. But I do think we're going to end up in a game 4 or a game 5. And once it gets to a 1-game elimination, game 5, anything can happen. So
Yeah, that's what
I'm picking, if I had to make picks, I know I'm picking favorites, but I'm picking the Astros and the Rays to have a rematch in the American League Championship Series come whenever that starts, a week and a half from now. So,
yeah. I mean, baseball's in a good spot right now. You got a lot of really interesting teams and teams that have a chance to go far as well.
right.
So, let's start talking about these NLDS matchups here. Starting with Brewers versus Braves, Milwaukee versus Atlanta.
Let's start with the Milwaukee Atlanta series because
Right,
we
yeah.
don't know who is going to face the San Francisco Giants yet. The Dodgers Cardinals game is still tied at 1 in the bottom of the 9th inning. The Dodgers have a runner on first base, but there's 2 outs. So there's a good chance that, barring one swing of the bat, that sends the Dodgers through to the division series and a walk-off here in the bottom of the 9th. There's a good chance this game is going to extra innings. So let's start by talking about the Brewers Braves matchup. Do you know anything about these teams, or do you want me to start with this one?
Most of what I know of the Brewers is basically they were in the NL Championship Series a couple of years ago, I believe, against the Dodgers, right?
Right.
But I honestly don't know much, so I'm gonna.
Here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to know about the Brewers. They, along with maybe the Dodgers, because the Dodgers have Scherzer, they have Bueller, they have Urias, they have all those guys. The Brewers might have the deepest or the best 1-2-3 punch of starting pitchers that you can have. Corbin Burns, he'll start game 1 on Friday. Brandon Woodruff, who will start game 2, and Freddy Peralta, who will start game 3. Those are the guys that you need to know. They've been among baseball's best all season long. Look, they did lose a high leverage reliever to an injury, a broken hand in Devin Williams. But they still have one of the best bullpens. Josh Hader is a name out of that bullpen you need to know. He remains dominant. He's basically unhittable when he has his A stuff. They ranked 7th in bullpen ERA and 1st in strikeout rate amongst relievers. So that tells you what you need to know about their bullpen. And they have a trio of dominant starting pitchers. So, I mean, you talk about a guy like Corbin Burns, a bona fide ace. He led the National League in ERA, or earned run average, Ks per 9, or strikeouts per 9 innings, fewest walks per 9. So he didn't walk a lot of batters, which you can't do in the postseason, as we saw last night with Garrett Cole. And he allowed the fewest home runs per 9. Excuse me. In fact, he allowed just 7 home runs in 167 total innings this season. So no pitcher. He's the first pitcher since 1913 to lead his league in strikeouts per 9 and lowest amount of walks per 9. So that's just one. I mean, he's for real. The Brewers won all 12 of his final 12 starts this season. And that playing in Milwaukee, a fan base that is crazed now that they just are literally coming off a championship with the Milwaukee Bucks. I think they're hungry. They smell blood in the water, and they want another championship right now. And look, I don't know much about their lineup, but I know this: they have Christian Yelich, a former MVP, and a bunch of other dangerous hitters around him, and they're balanced. I know that for a fact. So I do think they have the advantage in this series, but the one area they don't is experience. The Braves do have more experience, and they have a great infield, meaning first base, second base, shortstop, third base. That's what I mean when I say infield. They lost their star, a top 10 player in baseball, Ronald Acuna Jr., to an ACL injury right around the All-Star break. And that really did them in as far as, I guess, being one of the favorites here in the National League, because they would have if they had him and some of the other guys that went down with injury. But they made some moves at the trade deadline. They've had some unsung heroes over the course of the second half of the season, ever since the All-Star break. And they have experience. And they're, as I said, their infield is one of the best in baseball. They're the second team in baseball history to have all four of their infielders hit 25 plus home runs in a season. Freddy Freeman is a name you need to know, the first baseman. He's a free agent this offseason. He has something to prove. He's one of the best first basemen in the entire league, if not the best. You have Ozzie Albies, one of the top second basemen in all of baseball, a young player, kind of the dynamic duo with a guy like Ronald Acuna Jr., who unfortunately is not going to be in this series. Austin Riley at third base, another power hitter. And then Dansby Swanson, a great defensive shortstop that can run into a home run every once in a while, once in the blue moon. So look, when you have a leader and a guy like Freddie Freeman, a veteran who's been there, done that, a manager who's been there, done that, a starting pitcher, that a big game starting pitcher in Charlie Morton, who they traded for from the Rays this past, I think it was off season. He's been down this road before. He pitched Game 7 of the ALCS and Game 7 of the World Series before, so he's not fazed by anything. And he's the only player to win both a Game 7 of the American League Championship Series and a Game 7 of the World Series. He did both of those while starting for the Astros back when the Astros won in 2017. It wasn't Garrett Cole. It wasn't Justin Verlander. It was that was before they had Garrett Cole. But it wasn't Justin Verlander. It wasn't any of the other pitchers that they had back then on that great pitching staff when they won the World Series. It was Charlie Morton. So look, they have the experience. Not only that, if you want to look more recently, Morton won 3 of his 4 playoff starts for the Rays last year. And in his playoff career, he's 7-3 with an ERA at 3.38, which is amazing for a starting pitcher in the postseason. So they have that going. They have a strong infield. They have experience, but they just don't have the deepest bullpen in the world. And the Brewers do. And the Brewers have the advantage once it goes past Charlie Morton. I just think they're the deeper, better team. But I'm not going to count out the Braves because they're the Braves and you never know. But I think this is the one to watch in the National League, especially if the Dodgers don't advance to play the Giants. But if the Dodgers do somehow get through this wild card matchup and play the Giants, I think that's the best series out of all. You have a 106 win team against a 107 win team. Just think about that for a minute. So we can talk about that series, and then we can move on to the meat of our Wednesday episodes, and that's our predictions for football.
Yep. Okay. So any update on that game?
Hold on, man. Yeah. Chris Taylor walks it off in the bottom of the ninth inning for the Dodgers.
Oh, wow.
With 2 outs. He homers to left, and the Dodgers are through play their division rival, the San Francisco Giants, in the National League Division Series. So you officially have a 107-win team going up against a 106-win team starting on Friday on the San Francisco Bay. So let's talk about that. Do you have any thoughts on this? I can't wait to watch this video of the walk-off.
Well,
done here.
As someone who cheered for the Rangers back in the day when I lived in Dallas, I hate the Giants, and I will hate them for life. So I hope the Dodgers win. I'll say that. Here's the thing, though. The Dodgers, I mean, they came off winning the World Series last year, and it's not even like they took a step back. They were still amazing this season. They just happened to be in the same division as a team that was also incredible this season, in the Giants, obviously. But I still think the Dodgers are the front runner. Weirdly, even though they don't have home field advantage, I just feel more comfortable in the Dodgers showing up in the big time moments, because I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think the Giants have made the playoffs the last few years, have they? I feel like they've been in the
not been in the playoffs, no.
Right. They've been in a rebuild for a while now. And the Dodgers have been there, done that. They're defending champs, and up and down their lineup, up and like through that pitching staff and in their hitting lineup, it's nothing but clutch performers and clutch hitters. And the biggest proof of that was tonight. They just had a walk-off home run in a wild card game, win or go home, in the ninth. Just crazy. So yeah, that's why I'm picking the Dodgers.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I just disconnected my AirPods because I want everyone to see the video of this walk-off home run that the Dodgers just hit. Tell me if you can hear it. But I'm going to show you what happened and the reaction.
Wait, we might get copyrighted though. Don't show the video. Just play the audio.
All right, I'll play the audio.
Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field.
Dang. And with 2 outs also, oh my gosh. And you said it, like it was most likely going to go to extras, and then boom.
Exactly.
That bat.
Yeah, and look, that just shows how deep the Dodgers are, talent-wise. It wasn't Mookie Betts who hit it. It wasn't Corey Seager who hit it. It wasn't Cody Bellinger who hit it.
It wasn't Turner who hit it.
It wasn't Trey Turner who hit it. It wasn't Justin Turner who hit it. It wasn't even Max Muncy, who didn't even play this game, who hit it. It was Chris Taylor, who's a really good player, but he's not one of the marquee names you think about when you think about this Dodgers team, because they just have so much star power from top to bottom. And you think about this, as good as their pitching staff is, and it's really good, the acquisition of Max Scherzer, a 3-time Cy Young winner, probably a 4-time Cy Young winner now that he's been absolutely virtually unhittable up until these last 2 starts. including tonight where he struggled a little bit with his command, but he was virtually unhittable once he came over to well, he was unhittable in Washington, but he was super unhittable when he came over to the Dodgers, and it really propelled them to different heights. And they challenged. I mean, it was a fight all the way up until the last day of the regular season to decide that NL West division. There were two things that needed to be decided in that last day of the regular season last Sunday. It was the two wild card spots in the American League, and it was who was gonna win that NL West division. If the Giants had lost last Sunday and the Dodgers had won, which they did, they would have had a game 163, a tiebreaker game, to decide who was going to win that game on Monday, or who was going to win that division on Monday. But ended up the Giants won, so they get the home field advantage, and the Dodgers will have to travel to San Francisco. It's not a long trip, but they'll have to go to San Francisco and play in front of those fans in one of baseball's most historic rivalries. It's not up there. It's up there with the likes of, Yankees, Red Sox, that sort of thing. These two teams don't like each other. I think you hit it on the head when you said the Dodgers should be favored. They just have more star talent. They've been here, done that. The Giants are kind of new to this thing. They haven't been in the playoffs in a couple of years. They've been sort of a rebuild. They were the biggest surprise by far of any team this season. They just had, all the unsung heroes, and they found a way to hit with power. They had a lot of home runs, and their pitching was good enough to win ball games. But I do favor the Dodgers, the experience, the manager, the lineup. It's deep, as we just mentioned, and the starting pitching is what really gives them an advantage here. Scherzer, who won't actually, now that he's pitched tonight, won't actually pitch until like game 2 or 3, probably game 3 of that series, when they're back at Dodger Stadium for game 3. That's when Scherzer will pitch, but they'll have Walker Buehler most likely for game 1. He's been absolutely fantastic. And then they'll have Julio Urias, or who's the other guy that they got? I'll have to look it up, but they have 4 or 5 great starting pitchers in this lineup. I just don't think the Giants can hold it down all that long. But they did it in the regular season, but the postseason is different. So the reason the Giants have home field is because they had one more win over the Dodgers than the Dodgers did. They had the head-to-head. You play each team in your division 19 times. The Giants had the head-to-head 10-9 in that aspect during the regular season. But postseason's a lot different than the regular season. So I think it's going to be Dodgers-Brewers for the National League Championship Series if I had to make a prediction, but it's baseball. You can't predict baseball. So that's just my take on it. I'm going to look up who's going to be that starting pitcher that I'm forgetting, because remember, this is the last thing I'll say, that the Dodgers got to 106 wins, and they were without Trevor Bauer for virtually half the season when he was suspended at the trade deadline for some legal issues that we won't go into. But he hasn't been a part of this team since June, and they still got to 106 wins. That just shows how talented they are. And of course, once they heard the news about Bauer, they went in and got arguably the best starting pitcher of our generation, which definitely helps. But still, I mean, that just speaks to this organization and what they've been able to do. So it's going to be great. It's going to be fun to watch. If I had to make picks, those would be my picks. But I'm sure we'll talk more about this on next week's episode once we sort of have a clearer picture of what the championship series are going to be, because once we get to the championship series, it goes to best of 7 from there on out. And that's when it gets really, really fun. So we'll see what happens. If you don't have anything else to say, let's just go ahead and hop right over into our football picks.
Yeah, let's do it. So NFL Week 5 here. Currently, the standings are at with me at 30 and 38, and you're currently sitting at 34 and 34. You went 10 and 7 in Week 4. I went 7 and 10. Rough week for me. And your first week over 500. You had a really solid week.
We did both accomplish firsts in that we both did hit on our locks.
Yeah.
For the first time this season. I just had the advantage, I think, in the late window of last week because I had Baltimore and Seattle, and you had San Francisco and
Denver.
I think that was the separation there, but look, you got to hedge your bets, and it's going to go one way or the other. So maybe you'll get that advantage this week, and there's still a long way to go.
Right.
We're through week 4. Yeah, we're through week 4. It's 22% of the season because this year it's 17 games instead of 16. Mm-hmm. So it's not quite a fourth the way through, but it's basically there. We have a good sample size now on what each team is, what their identity is, and how each team has been playing. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have any prep for this, but I think it's going to be good. Just go into this based on what I've seen and not really – I'm going to try something different this week and see how it works.
All right. Yeah. And as always, soon as we make our picks on the pod, once the pod is done, it's locked. So it should be interesting with no prep. So we'll just get right into this. First game, starting out with a pretty big marquee matchup here. Thursday night football,
right?
Los Angeles Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. Rams favored -1.5, coming off that loss at home against the Cardinals. Who you got?
Oh, this is so tough. A divisional matchup on Thursday night football. The Seahawks, who I did bet on last week because for the simple fact that Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll had never lost 3 in a row, and that continued last Sunday, in large part due to because Trey Lance had to come into that game for the second half, but nevertheless, Russell Wilson got the job done, and I feel really bad betting against Russell Wilson at home on Thursday night football because if you look it up, he's really good on Thursday night at home. But I do think the Rams are a better football team. I don't think you're going to see another performance like they had last week in Arizona. And I think Arizona, and we'll talk about this a little later when we get to their game in the late window, I think Arizona is a top 3 team in the league. I think they've shown that, and they proved themselves last week what they're capable of. I think the Rams, they turned the ball over 2 times in the red zone in that game. Stafford didn't really play his best football. They just came out flat because they were coming off a huge win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they just looked flat all game. But I do like this offense against the Seattle defense that struggled mightily. The secondary is a big, especially those cornerbacks, matching up against Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods and all these weapons. What's his name? Van Jefferson has also been really key for the Rams here lately. I think it's going to be sort of a struggle for Seattle. I hate betting against Russell Wilson, but I think I'm going to do it here. I'm going to take the Rams to win -1.5.
Yeah.
I just think they're better.
I'm going to have to agree with you here. I mean, that's for me to just talk about that Cardinals game real quick. To me, that game came down to the Cardinals taking away the deep ball from the Rams. We talked about it all, like in all of our Wednesday podcasts predicting the games. The Rams, the juice that the deep ball brings with Matthew Stafford at quarterback. And the Cardinals came out and they were like, no, we're not going to let that. We're not going to let that happen. We're not going to give you that. And from that point, it just kind of took the juice out of their offense. They were still able to move the ball, but they weren't able to like get that mojo going. I guess when they get their confidence going, I think the Rams are, they have the talent and we've seen it. They have the talent to be the best team in football. And they just didn't really get that going last week. But for this game, I think the deep ball is going to be there. This Seattle defense, their secondary, it hasn't been all that great to start the year. They haven't been terrible. They haven't been nearly as bad as they were to start the year last year, for sure. But I think a lot of that has to do with just the young players getting slightly better, and also that pass rush being much, much better this year. So I think Seattle can win this game if they get to Matthew Stafford and they're able to get pressure and also stop that deep ball. That's going to be the biggest key to this game, because I feel pretty comfortable in saying I think Russell Wilson can keep them close. I think he can keep them attached on his own. So it's tough, but I'm going to go with the Seahawks to cover. Actually, I'm going to change my mind.
Okay. And look, Russell Wilson, as I said, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but he's really good in primetime spots. Not only on Thursday night, but basically in every primetime spot there is. So
yeah, and I've done that a few times this year where I pick one team and then I give my analysis and then I talk myself into picking the other team. I don't know. Russell Wilson in primetime games against his division always comes out big, no matter like where his team is at. I trust Russell Wilson. So we'll see what happens.
right. Okay. Note on this next game before you make a pick.
Mm-hmm.
It says Jets at Falcons, but this game's being played in London. So keep that in mind when you make a selection. The Jets are coming off a big, unexpected win against the Tennessee Titans. And the Falcons, they, I believe, blew a game late in the fourth quarter to the Washington football team, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep,
So they did the typical Atlanta Falcons thing to do. So who you got in this game? Across the Atlantic Ocean?
I'm gonna pick the Jets to cover here. I think the Falcons should win, but I like what I saw from Zach Wilson this past week. He was much better, much sharper throwing into tight windows. We saw him miss a couple throws in the first few weeks of the season, and it was good to see him get back on track with his accuracy. So I think I think that was a big game for his confidence as a player for sure, and going forward to the rest of the year. And specifically against this matchup, open receivers are going to be there. So he just has to hit it. And from there, I mean, I think it'll be a close game as long as Zach Wilson is able to hit those big throws down the field, because those are available against his defense.
Right. I agree with you. I'm taking the Jets plus the points, plus 3.5 to beat the Falcons. It just feels like the Falcons, no matter what the situation is, find ways to lose games. They find new ways to lose games every single week. Their defense isn't good. It hasn't gotten any better. They're last in the league in points allowed. They allow the most points in the league. I think last week was a big confidence boost for the Jets offensively, especially Zach Wilson, who made some big throws in that fourth quarter, threw 2 touchdown passes to Jamison Crowder and Corey Davis to bring the Jets back in that game and win it in overtime. He led a go-ahead 13-play drive in overtime. He finished with 297 yards passing through the air. Granted, the Titans aren't a great defense, but that's still really good in a road environment. And while he did throw his league-leading 8th interception, look, that's just the way it's going to be this season. He's going to make mistakes, but he has that ability, and we saw flashes of it in that game. They can move the ball. They have enough weapons to move the ball against this Falcons defense. And their defense isn't as bad as some people think it is. They're actually one of the top run defenses in the league. And they play off that run defense, that physical defensive line. So even if they don't end up winning this game, I think it's going to be close because that's just the way it always seems to end up with Atlanta. I think last week was a step in the right direction, and it's a chance for the Jets to get going here.
Yeah.
Like another bad defense.
Right.
So
exactly. So moving on there, both taking the underdog. So this next game, Broncos at Steelers. Steelers are favored -1.5 at home here. And I'm assuming Drew Lock is going to play in this game based on this line.
Yeah. That's what it seems like right now, but it could change.
Yeah, that makes things a lot tougher, definitely. Soon as Drew Lock went in the game last week against Baltimore, they went scoreless the rest of the game. The entire efficiency of the offense just was completely non-existent as soon as he got into the game, which is a little disappointed for me when I was watching it because I wanted to see if Denver was for real. But anyway, that's another conversation for another day. I'm gonna pick the Steelers. In spite of myself a little bit. I think if you're going to make a bet on this game, bet the under. Don't bet the actual score or don't bet the actual team that's going to win because I think Denver's defense can keep it close. I feel pretty comfortable in saying that. But I just think I just can't trust your lock. I don't know.
This is a game that it's, as you said, if you're actually betting money, I wouldn't bet the spread.
Yeah.
This game because it's just so unpredictable. Unless we do find out that Teddy Bridgewater will play, that makes things a little bit different, but I don't think it makes it that much different. Look. It's going to be low scoring. I know that for a fact. We know what Denver has defensively. They have one of the best secondaries in the entire NFL. They can match up with these Pittsburgh receivers, press them at the line of scrimmage, right? And they have a pass rush. And I watched the Green Bay game, and they were playing without their best pass rusher in Zardarius Smith last week. And they were getting home because these tackles for Pittsburgh are just so bad. And look, Ben's bad, but I don't think not many quarterbacks, I don't think, could look very good behind this Steelers offensive line. I'll just say that right now. Maybe a couple, that have the ability to overcome this type of offensive line. Like we've seen this with Russell Wilson.
Mhm.
We've seen this with Patrick Mahomes and a couple other guys, but this is bad. And I am scared because I'm not sure of the status of Bradley Chubb. I haven't really looked into that, but I do know Von Miller is healthy and he's playing really well right now. And that's scary when you consider that he's going to be going up against Dan Moore Jr., a rookie tackle who was absolutely dominated last week in Green Bay. But look, last week, even though they ended up losing because they were playing Aaron Rodgers in Lambeau, a place where he doesn't lose very often, and Green Bay is just a better team. And I had no expectations for Pittsburgh going into that game, as evidenced by me picking Green Bay for my lock of the week. There were some things in that game that did give me a little bit of optimism that this Pittsburgh offense can start to find a way to at least look like a competent offense and move the ball and maybe get into the end zone a couple times each game. And look, TJ Watt, he played last week, but you could tell he wasn't fully healthy. He's not fully healthy. He might say he is, but he's not. He still had 2 sacks in that game. So I think with another week, this Pittsburgh offense or Pittsburgh defense has really gotten away from what they do well, and that's like blitz. That's how they've been so good the past couple of years in getting to the quarterback is because they blitz. But now it seems like they're trying to play by just rushing 4 or 5 guys. They're trying to get home with 4 or 5 guys, and that doesn't work when your best pass rusher, one of the best pass rushers in the league, is playing at less than 100%. And remember, TJ Watt had that whole holding situation during training camp. So as physical freak as he is, he gets a little winded in these. He's been a little winded in these games. He's had to come out at certain times. And they do have better outside linebacker depth with Melvin Ingram and Alex Highsmith, but Alex Highsmith is still a second-year young player finding his way, and Melvin Ingram's a guy who hasn't played a lot in the past couple of years due to injuries, all that stuff. So, but if Drew Lock starts this game, I have confidence that the Steelers will find a way. Veteran coach. They're desperate for a win. They're at home. You can't – I mean, if you go to 1-4 here, there's really no hope. They're already in a huge hole. They're 1-3. Every other team in their division is 3-1. Every other team in their division has a young quarterback, a loaded roster. They already have a loss to a divisional opponent in Cincinnati. You can't lose another game here to a team like Denver that's likely maybe going to be without Teddy Bridgewater. I think they're going to find a way. I think this could likely be like a 20-17 game where the team that wins the turnover battle wins the game. I think that's what.
And if Teddy Bridgewater ends up playing, then I'm willing to take the L on this one. For me, like strategically speaking, what the heck? I can't speak right now. Picking the same game, picking the same team to win here is actually better for me because this game is a coin flip if you put Teddy Bridgewater in there, or maybe even more towards Denver. But anyways, moving on here. That was enough for that game. Detroit at Minnesota is the next game. I'll start this one off. Minnesota's favored -7.5. So far, that last game, that Steelers game, was the only game where I picked the favorite to win the game. And I'm actually going to pick the Lions to cover here. They're a scrappy team, and I feel good about their running attack against this Vikings front. Obviously, we saw Kirk Cousins struggle a little bit, and obviously that was the Browns defense who's playing at an elite level right now. But I just feel confident in the Lions' running attack, DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams. If they play the ball control game, keep that Vikings offense, which can be explosive at times, keep that offense off the field, and just hang in there. I think they can cover that 7.5 spread.
Yeah, I feel really bad betting on the Detroit Lions.
Yeah,
it
does feel weird.
Like three weeks in a row at least, where I bet on the Lions. I think I won the week before last and lost last week. Give credit to the Bears last week. Matt Nagy handed the play calling over to offensive coordinator Bill Lazor. They went ahead early and they never looked back. And when you have a quarterback like Jared Goff, that's not really a good situation, being down 3 touchdowns on the road. So against a good defense. And look, the Vikings defense has been they're a team that plays well at home. I will say that. Right. But they did struggle against a good defense last week in the Cleveland Browns. And if you look at the Lions, they're an 0-4 team. They're one of 2 teams left that's winless. They're 0-4, but if you watch their games, you wouldn't necessarily think that they're 0-4 because, as you said, they're scrappy. They're physical at the line of scrimmage. They run the ball. And look, I know I've said that they don't have many dynamic weapons on the perimeter, and they don't. But Quintez Cephas is a guy that's impressed me as a receiver here lately. And they have TJ Hawkinson and a good tight end group. So I think the Vikings win. If it was -6.5, -7, I might take the Vikings, but I think it's a little too big here. I think Detroit's going to stay in this game, as they have been doing week in and week out, aside from last week.
Right.
So
that's exactly what I was thinking too. The Vikings will win, I feel, and I think it'll be a 5 to 6 point game somewhere in there.
Look,
maybe even a touchdown.
Detroit last week against the Bears, they moved the ball. Like, they can move the ball up and down the field. But the problem with last week was they shot themselves in the foot when they got into the red zone. They had 2 turnovers in the red zone. Jared Goff lost 2 fumbles. And they went 0 for 4. They didn't score on any of their 4 possessions where they got inside the Bears 10. And that's just absolutely brutal. So they've already covered a couple of steep spreads this year where they've been big underdogs like this game. And I feel confident that they'll do it again, even if they don't end up winning the game. So we both agree there.
All right. Yeah. Moving on here. Green Bay at Cincinnati. I'll let you start off here. It's your division rival here.
I'm going to go with Green Bay. I really like the way they're playing right now. They're averaging over 30 points per game here on their 3-game win streak ever since that blowout loss to the New Orleans Saints week 1. Aaron Rodgers is a bad man. Not only does he have Devontae Adams, but Randall Cobb has started to play a big role in this offense. Their offensive line was a question coming into the season, sort of, because they did lose their all-pro center, Corey Linsley. He went elsewhere. I don't think they have one of their other big guys on that offensive line. Right now.
What's his
Brian
name? Bakhtiari.
Bakhtiari. Bakhtiari is the guy. Yeah, they don't have him, but look, they've played some good pass rushes up to this point. They played the Saints, they played the Steelers. They've played some good pass rushes, and they've held their own. And they can run the football. And look, when a team is clicking on all cylinders and they have Aaron Rodgers, I just think, and I'm taking nothing away from the Bengals. Joe Burrow is great. They're playing well. They have weapons offensively, but I think Joe Mixon is banged up, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Aaron Rodgers can get it done against the Cincinnati defense. As long as that offensive line continues to play like it has been the past couple of weeks, because the Cincinnati front, it's the strength of their defense. That defensive line is really where it starts. I know they have Jesse Bates, who's a really good safety, but that secondary really plays off of this physical front. And I just think I'm not going to bet against Aaron Rodgers in this situation, against a young quarterback with still sort of a questionable offensive line. But that's just my thoughts.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's just a coaching matchup. I think Zach Taylor, I still have questions about him, to be honest. I know they're having some success this year, which is good. But when I look at the Bengals offense, I don't see a lot of them scheming guys open. I don't see a lot of them helping out Joe Burrow, giving him moving pockets. It's a lot of Joe Burrow just dropping back to pass and just having to read the defense just in the very traditional way, which is not exactly what I was expecting when they hired Zach Taylor. I was expecting more of the Sean McVay type outside zone, play action pass type offense. So I just think Joe Burrow might be saving Zach Taylor's job with the way that he's playing right now. And I don't know if that's a good thing for the Bengals long term. We'll see. But keep an eye on Jamar Chase and that Jair Alexander matchup. That's going to be a fun matchup for sure. Two of the best at their position facing off for the first time.
Okay. These next 2 or 3 games, we're going to have to address some elephants in the room here that we haven't really talked about. But you'll see what those are when they come up. We have Miami at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is coming off a trip to Foxborough, where Tom Brady made his return to Foxborough and beat the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick in a thrilling, low-scoring, classic Foxborough-ish, rainy sort of game that, Brady, of course, won because he's Tom Brady. And he did become the NFL. He passed Drew Brees, finally, for the all-time passing yards record, which he would have done anyways. Because he's going to play until he's 50-some years old. That's at least what it looks like. But congratulations to him on doing that. He's the GOAT, unquestionably. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on this game. It's a huge spread, 10.5 points. And to be honest with you, while the Buccaneers are winning these games, I don't think they're necessarily playing as if I watched them right now and I knew I was just an average football fan and I didn't know as much as I actually do right now, and I watched them play, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're the team that we all thought they were. They're not. I wouldn't say that team should be a favorite for the Super Bowl as it stands right now. But what do you think about this game?
Well, in a situation where if their secondary wasn't completely hurt right now, I would say that this would be a get-right game for their defense. Miami, outside of that Raiders game, they've been anemic offensively. That offensive line has really held them back. And I think what Vegas is looking, I don't know, I'm not sure what this line is from. It might be from CBS, I think, but I think where this line comes from is just betting against the Miami offense more so than anything else. I don't think they're putting that much faith in Tampa Bay for, say, like playing up to like a Super Bowl level or anything. I just think they're betting on Jacoby Brissett struggling more than anything. But I'm actually going to pick the Dolphins to cover just because people forget that Dolphins defense is still really solid. And I haven't seen outside of the first game, this Tampa Bay offense really explode like we've been accustomed to.
Right. I am gonna take Miami plus 10.5 because that's just a huge spread for a team like Tampa Bay, who's been, as you mentioned, they're just depleted in the secondary, and they're really not playing. They're not firing on all cylinders yet, and we aren't worried because it's Tom Brady, and they have all this talent, and they're going to get it together. They didn't really look like a good football team until like week 13 last year. So, we're not worried. They're still winning football games despite not really playing all that well. And they definitely have the advantage here in terms of talent and just roster. But I do think Miami is going to keep this close. I do think that Brian Flores is a really good coach. Although this team has been underwhelming so far, I don't think he's going to be a guy who's going to get completely outcoached by Bruce Arians. I do like that for Miami, and they have an experienced, well-coached defense. What does worry me is, number one, as I said, they're not playing well, and they've been one of the worst teams. In fact, when you look at point differential, they have one of the worst point differentials in the league. Miami does, minus 47. And they're not very good situationally on defense. They're allowing their opponents to convert on 54% of third downs.
Wow.
And that doesn't bode well when you go against Tom Brady. I will say that. But look, Gronk is not healthy. You could tell last week that Brady sort of missed him, especially in the red zone. And I just have a belief in Brian Flores that he's going to have his team ready to play, especially getting embarrassed last week at home. I think it was against a winless Colts team. They went down 20-3. They looked inept offensively. They eventually lost that game 27-17. They scored a couple late, sort of, I guess, not necessarily garbage time touchdowns, but I think the game was out of reach by then. And I do feel a little bit of, I guess, I don't feel a ton of conviction picking against Tom Brady in this game, but with the way Miami has looked so far, but I think Brian Flores is a key in this game. He's going to come up with, and he's been with Tom. He knows Tom Brady from his time in New England. So I just think it'll end up evening itself out as the game goes on.
Yeah, this is a tough line for sure. This might be one of the toughest weeks we've had to pick up and down so far this season. So moving on though, Patriots at Texans. Patriots favored minus 9.5. That's massive. Another massive spread. What do you think?
Before we talk about the game, Patriots trade Stephon Gilmore.
To the Panthers, right?
Yep, to the Panthers for a 6th-round pick. What did you think about the move?
Well, I believe the Panthers, they had a few injuries on their cornerback room, I believe. I think J.C. Horn went down with a foot injury. And I think also corner on the other side, can't remember his name. I think he also went down. So, I mean, I think it's a good move bringing in a veteran, former defensive player of the year. They're a young defense, so I think even if he doesn't play well, I think it can only be positive for that locker room.
Yeah, I agree. They got him for cheap too. When you can get, and I know he's sort of on the wrong side of 30. He's coming off a big, it was some sort of thigh muscle injury that he suffered in the middle of last year. He had surgery on it. He's not going to be actually ready to play. He hasn't practiced yet this season. He's been in a holdout. He's not necessarily fully healthy yet. He's not going to play for the Panthers until week 7, week 8. But I definitely think it's a good move for the Panthers. They also went out last week and acquired a young athletic cornerback from the New Orleans Saints, C.J. Henderson. So they have 2 new really good players on the outside. And what they're telling you is, we think, even though from an outside perspective, it seems like a rebuild, we think that with this new and improved defense that's playing really well right now, and a quarterback in Sam Darnold who's also playing well with these weapons, we think we can win right now, even though it may seem like from an outside perspective that we're in this rebuilding phase. And as it stands right now, if I had to make and I know it's early, if I had to make a pick for Coach of the Year, there's a good chance I would pick Matt Rule and what he's doing. But we'll talk about that when we get to the Panthers game. For this game, I'm gonna pick the Patriots. I believe it's Davis Mills again. Their offense has looked terrible with him at the helm the past couple of weeks. I just think this Patriots defense is going to play well. They're coming off an emotional, disappointing loss. Belichick game plans really well against rookie quarterbacks. He's 22-6. He wins these games by a lot typically. This defense is still really good. They just brought in Jamie Collins, even though they did lose Gilmore, but they were playing well without Gilmore regardless, so it doesn't really matter. And I was really impressed by Mac Jones last week. I mean, that's a pressure-filled game. Playing against Tom Brady, a guy who's been there for 20 years, but he was calm. He made all the throws he had to, and he kept them in that game. And there were a couple throws that could have been intercepted, but I thought overall you can make an argument that he played a better game than Tom Brady did. And I know that's sort of crazy to say that, but I think you could definitely make an argument. So I think they're just a better all-around football team. Even though they're on the road, it doesn't matter. Belichick dominates rookie quarterbacks. When you have this much of a historical president, I don't think you can go against that. Houston's shown nothing the past couple of weeks to make me believe that they're going to win another game this season. Maybe if they play Jacksonville. But yeah, New England minus 9.5. I'll lay the points there, even though it's a big spread.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the exact same thing. I'm taking New England to cover. Mac Jones, it feels like he's moving in the right direction. He's finding chemistry with some of these receivers. Jacoby Myers, he had a touchdown to Jonnu Smith. That was a good sign. Also getting Hunter Henry involved. Both those free agent tight ends they brought in. I think the rhythm is starting to show for this Patriots offense. It's just the question of whether it's too little too late to make a comeback and be a contender for the wild card. We'll have to see about that.
Right.
So,
all right.
Moving on. New Orleans Saints at the Washington football team. Saints favored minus 1.5.
Yeah. The Saints are going to be a tough team to predict all season.
Yeah.
When they're favored this year, they're 0-2. When they're underdogs this year, they're 2-0. So I don't know what's going to happen on a week-to-week basis with this team. They're on the road against a well-coached Washington football team. They did look good offensively last week. The Saints did. They appeared to have their ground and passing game on the same page. They accumulated 405 yards total, but it didn't matter because they were somehow single-handedly outgained by Daniel Jones, allowing over 8 yards per play, and they gave up 2 late scoring drives in their home opener to the Giants, a game which they led 21-10 with 7 minutes to play. They fell 27-21 in overtime. And it was an uncharacteristic defensive showing for this Saints football team, which ranks 5th in opponent points per game and owns the number 2 run defense. So I do like Washington playing at home. I just really can't bet on the Saints because I just don't know what I'm going to get on a week-to-week basis. And I do think this Washington football team, look, we said it before, Heineke can play. They have a running game with Antonio Gibson, and I think this defense is starting to play better. So I'm going to pick the football team at home, and I'm basically asking the football team to win because it's plus 1.5 spread, so they basically have to win outright or only lose by 1. But I think they can do that. I think it's a pretty evenly matched game, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, you mentioned how unpredictable the Saints have been. I think you could argue that Washington has been very unpredictable as well. They've played, like, their style of football has been entirely opposite from what I was thinking they were going to be this season. I mean, obviously the quarterback change makes a difference, but this team has been in shootouts after shootout after shootout. When I was mostly expecting them to be playing in like close, tight defensive battles where you only got to score 24 points to get a win. That just hasn't been the case. But I think looking at this game, it's just all about these defensive lines. Which defensive line is going to impose their will on the opposing quarterback? And somehow, even though Jameis Winston is more of a veteran, I feel more comfortable picking Taylor Heineke. Wait, is it Taylor Heineke or Trevor Heineke? Shoot. Yeah. Yeah. I feel more comfortable picking Taylor Heineke in this situation to get it done because we've seen Jameis Winston make questionable decisions under pressure.
Yeah. So are you picking Washington?
Yep. I'm big in Washington at home.
Okay. All right. We're about halfway through the slate. Do you see any locks, or do you have your eye on one later on in the game?
I don't have a lock yet. No.
Okay. Just checking in.
Yeah.
So we'll move on. Our next game is Philly at Carolina, minus 3.5. Who do you have here?
This is another tough game. I mean, we saw the Eagles, I think, take a step forward offensively last week. I mean, facing a struggling Chiefs defense. But even so, they still looked very impressive. They kept that game close, relatively close.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while there, I thought they were going to take away my lock again. But anyway, this Eagles offense is very unpredictable. And then facing a Panthers defense who the last couple of weeks has faltered due to injuries, I believe. But still has one of the best defensive lines in football. So this game really, to me, comes down to the matchup of this Carolina defense against this Eagles offensive line. The Eagles' offensive line has been really solid this year. But even with that, I think just some of the schemes the Panthers run might confuse Jalen Hurts. They like to run a lot of multiple fronts. They like to they send four guys, but they'll have somebody random dropping back into coverage in a defensive back running up the field and blitzing. So it looks like a blitz, but it's not a blitz, and there's still the same amount of guys in coverage. So that kind of stuff, that kind of variance in their defense, I think is going to confuse Jalen Hurts, and that's why I'm going to pick the Panthers here to cover.
Yeah, this is a tough game. You mentioned it. The Eagles, their offense has actually kind of come together pretty nicely here. Mm-hmm. Their offensive line's playing well. Jalen Hurts has been reasonable. I mean, he's
decent
for a second-year quarterback, completing 66% of his passes. That's pretty good. Over close to 1,200 yards and 7 passing touchdowns. And I know the Chiefs' defense is pretty bad, and we'll talk about that later, but he threw for 387 yards last week, and he kept them in that game. But the problem is their defense they can't stop a nosebleed. They gave up I know it's the Chiefs, but they gave up 470 yards last week. Their third straight defeat following a 1-0 start. They ranked bottom 3 in the league against the run, which is surprising considering the guys they have up front in that front 7 or that front 4. And they're not much better statistically against the pass. Sam Darnold still playing well. Even in a loss to the Cowboys, he scored 4 total touchdowns. And he's the first quarterback ever, I believe, to have 5 rushing touchdowns in the first 4 weeks of the season. So he's doing it both with his legs and through the air. Look, I know they don't have Christian McCaffrey, and that would certainly help. But they didn't seem to miss him that much last week. Chuba Hubbard out of Oklahoma State averaged 4.4 yards per carry in his place last week. So I still think they can run the ball. They're at home. They're coming off a loss to a really good team in the Cowboys. We'll talk about that later, man. I think Matt Rule they have the coaching advantage here. Matt Rule against Nick Sirianni. So I'm going to bet Sam Darnold over Jalen Hurts. I'm going to take this, even though it's a banged up defense, I'm taking this Carolina defense against Jalen Hurts rather than bet on Philly's defense, which can't stop a nosebleed, against this Carolina offense. So Carolina's 2-0 when favored this season. I think they continue that. And their defense plays better this week. So take Carolina minus 3.5 this game.
Yep. All right. Next game here, Titans at Jaguars. I'm going to start off here. This feels like a trap. This gives me trap game vibes. If I'm a Titans fan. I mean, if it weren't for the most bizarre situation ever in terms of coaching in Jacksonville, then I would feel comfortable picking the Jaguars to cover. But with that going on, I don't know. It's tough. It's really, really tough. I don't know how this team is going to sift through all that drama and still have a good product on the football field and stop Derrick Henry. That doesn't seem like that doesn't seem plausible to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick the Titans.
Okay.
But I will say I don't think people should bet on this game. This feels like a trap game. It gives me weird vibes, man. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Okay. The AFC South is a bad division.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'll say that first.
Yep.
So if you're a team like the Titans, who they have their flaws, man, are they flawed? But they have the formula to win. When they have that formula going, they're hard to beat, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to win these games if you're the Titans.
Yeah.
You cannot have another letdown like you did last week against the Jets. To me, it's which Tennessee team is going to show up? Is it going to be the team that we saw in the second half against Seattle? Absolutely dominant, running the football, physical, can't stop Derrick Henry type game where they go to their play action when they need it? Or is it going to be what happened last week? And I know they didn't have Julio Jones. And I know they didn't have
AJ
Brown. But there's still no excuses to lose a game like that, especially when you're up early and you have Derrick Henry. So I don't know. I wouldn't bet on this game if you put a gun to my head. Actually, maybe I would, but you get the point. Like
that would be intense.
You get the hyperbole there. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I have to go with the Titans because Jacksonville, while they've been more competitive as of late, when you have this situation here with their coach and there's been reports, a lot of players don't really have any trust in their coach right now. And that doesn't bode well for a game against a still talented football team, which should have at least one of those guys back, I believe, Julio Jones or AJ Brown. I don't know the exact status of either, but I think one of them.
They're both questionable as of right now.
Okay, well, I'm betting on the fact that one of them is going to play this game, and I think that should be enough to win the game.
Yeah. One last thing I want to say about this whole Urban Meyer thing. The owner, I can't remember his name, the owner of the Jaguars, he had a really bizarre quote that I'm going to it might be a bit of a paraphrase because I don't have it right in front of me, but he said something along the lines of this. He has to regain our respect.
Yep.
That feels terrible to me. Why are you giving him the chance to regain your respect? Once he's the coach, once he loses the respect of the owner and the players, he should be out of there.
Yeah.
That's just, I don't know. That's just the sign of just a organization that doesn't know what the heck they're doing.
Well, they really don't.
Yeah. So.
Okay, into the late, or I believe this is the last game of the early window.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago and Las Vegas. The Monday night football game was fantastic with the Raiders and the Chargers. The Raiders lost, which makes Arizona the last undefeated team in the NFL. And the Raiders lost to a very good football team last week on the road, excuse me. But the Bears, coming off a win where their offense looked a lot better than it did the week previous, and they're on the road in Las Vegas. So it is -4.5. So what do you think?
I'm actually gonna pick the Bears to cover here. It's just simply based on where this defense is trending. I could be wrong on this. It could be an absolute disaster, actually. I actually see it two different ways. It could either be a blowout, an absolute disaster, where Justin Fields is sacked 15 times or whatever, or the Bears will keep it close to the end and Raiders win by a field goal or something along those lines. And that's actually the result that I'm going to go with here. I just think this Raiders secondary, with the injuries they've had, as of right now, they're closer to the defense they were last year than the defense they were the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. With Trayvon Mullen going down, with can't remember the safety's name they just drafted. Was it Merrick? I think he went down as well.
Yeah.
So those are two guys that they added to this defense that have played really, really good football that now they have to replace with guys that were on their team last year in Damon Arnett and Jonathan Abram, who haven't played good football over the course of their careers in terms of coverage. So if Justin Fields can continue to hit guys downfield and be accurate and be efficient and use his legs as well, then I think they can keep this game close.
Yeah, this is another tough one. I think what gives me confidence that Chicago can keep this close is that they can run the ball.
Yeah, right.
David Montgomery had another 100-yard rushing game last week. He's been a really big part of the Chicago offense to this point. One of their best players to this point.
I actually think he's injured, though.
Well, if he is, that might change my pick. But I still think, yeah, he is injured. He had 106 yards, 2 scores before getting injured. But their backup, Damian Williams, who was formerly for the Kansas City Chiefs, came into the game, and he had 55 yards rushing and a touchdown in his absence. So they still were pretty effective running the ball in his absence. I still think they can do it. Justin Fields, as we've been saying, regardless of what you think about how early or how late he needs to play, how much time he needs, is he ready, is he not ready? He gives this team the best chance to reach their ceiling, whatever that ceiling may be. No matter what you think about how much time he actually needs to be an NFL ready, you traded up to get him. So you should play him. And I think the change in philosophy, they found something last week against the Lions with Bill Lazor calling the plays instead of Matt Nagy that clicked. And I think the Raiders, I think last week was sort of a flat offensive showing. And I don't think that will necessarily happen again because they just have too many weapons. And let me tell you, that slot receiver from Clemson, I'm blanking on his name right
Hunter
now. Hunter Renfrow. That dude can ball.
Yeah, he's a player. Oh, man.
Himself, yeah, he and Darren Waller, they make up a large part of that offense. And Derek Carr, despite a rough game last week, he's still in the running early for MVP. He's been really good. It's a hard game to pick. This could go one of two ways, as you said, but I think I'm going to go Chicago plus 4.5. But when we loop back around to see if we want to change picks at the end of this thing, I might end up changing that one. So I still don't have a lot of confidence in Chicago. But
okay, yeah, fair enough. But
moving
along from that, or unless you want to add something.
No, I'm good.
Okay, yep. So moving along from that game, this next one I think is the game of the week. Got the Browns at the Los Angeles Chargers.
I made this real fast. I made this a pick'em game. because the line on CBS Sports was minus a half point for the Chargers.
Yeah.
So I just decided why not go ahead, make it a pick'em game.
Yeah.
So you pick who's going to win and why for this one.
Yeah, that's what I figured since I didn't see the line. So, well, I'm going to pick the Chargers. I just think the Chargers right now are trending up right now. They're playing some really good football. And I think if you're comparing them to any of the best teams in the league, they're right there. And then look at the other side with the Browns. Obviously, their defense has been elite. Everything you could have asked for from their defense. But the offense has concerned me a little bit. This offensive line hasn't been as good in pass protection as advertised. Baker Mayfield has had to run around just a little bit, which has caused him to be a little bit jumpy in the pocket, miss a few throws, and kind of revert back to second year in the NFL, Baker Mayfield a little bit. It hasn't cost them because he hasn't turned the ball over. But still, I still think it's a little bit concerning. Obviously, they can bounce back. But I just think the Chargers are playing better football right now. That's pretty much my only reason for picking the Chargers. I just feel more confident in the football that they're playing right now.
That's fair. They're definitely playing really good. They're 3-1, and they started 2-0 against their division for the first time in 9 years. I think I said that on last podcast last week that they had the chance to do that, and they did. They beat the Raiders, so they have wins over the Raiders and the Chiefs, and they're looking really good. Justin Herbert, man, he's just must watch television.
Yeah.
I don't know why either of us cannot properly enunciate our words tonight, but whatever, it is what it is. However, and I get it, Cleveland offensively has sort of looked bad the past couple of weeks, especially through the year. Baker Mayfield hasn't played well. He said that, I believe, in his press conference. Their offensive line hasn't been as dominant as they have been in years past with pass protection. They're not as efficient in the passing game. And look, some people have these weird conspiracy theories, or I don't know if you call them that, but it seems that with Odell Beckham, Baker just doesn't, I don't know what it is, but he just doesn't play as well with Odell Beckham than he does without Odell Beckham. And that might or may not be a factor in this. But I do think that with the combination, and I get it, the Chargers did a great job of stopping the run last week against the Raiders. They held Josh Jacobs, who was coming off an injury, to under 50 yards rushing, and that's a big reason why they won that game. They forced Derek Carr to throw the ball, and they got home with Joey Bosa and all those pass rushers. And they have a good running game as well. Austin Eckler, man, I forgot how good that guy is. But he's been hard-pressed to stay on the field for much of the past couple of years. He's had a hard time staying healthy, but he rushed for 117 rushing yards last week and 2 touchdowns. It was really good last week, and he's a threat through the air. But the way you win on the road in this league is a defense that travels. I think Cleveland's does, and a running game, and Cleveland definitely has that. 4 straight games with 150 or more rushing yards, and that's kept them alive offensively. And aside from last week, the Chargers have been susceptible defensively against the run. If they can stop it, the Chargers have the advantage. But if not, I do think Cleveland can find a way to get something done. I'm not sure we have disagreed yet. I think this is going to be the first time we disagree. I'm going to go with the Browns to win close. I still need to see more from the Chargers. It's just this thing I have with the Chargers.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And, I would be right there with you, but the thing that put it over the top for me was just simply the defensive game plan that Brandon Staley and their coaching staff were able to come up with for the Raiders last week. I thought it was just like really impressive and telling, really, that they held the Raiders to did they hold them to 0 points the whole first half, pretty much?
I think it was 21-0 at halftime.
Yeah. I mean, to be able to come up with a game plan and execute it that well right out of the gates, I mean, that's coaching. I mean, we talk about it all the time with offensive coaches, how they scheme up the first drive before the game. But defensive coaches, they come up with the game plans for the first part of the game as well.
Let me just say this
I just
before
thought that was really impressive.
Look, it's a flip of the coin game. I get it.
Yeah.
Go either way. Chargers are playing really good football. We have questions about the Browns' passing game. Both of us do, but I still think the Browns can get it done given their running game. But I will say this about the Chargers. Last week, going into halftime, they led 21-0. The game seemed out of reach. Their defense was playing lights out. They were dominating the football game on both sides of the ball, and the Raiders had no life whatsoever. However, the Raiders came out. They scored a touchdown on their opening drive. They got a stop and then scored another touchdown on their next drive to make it a one-score game. And I think the difference this year with this Chargers team is that's a game that they lose last year.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a momentum change that they lose last year, but they stood up when they had to make a play. And I think that's the difference with this Chargers team. That's going to make them a playoff team this year.
Right.
So I will say that about the Chargers. Brandon Staley, I think he's one of the new coaches that's going to stick. He just was groomed under Sean McVay. He knows what he's doing defensively, and there's just too much talent on this team for them not to win 10 games, especially when they're already 2-0 in one of the toughest divisions in the entire league. So, look, coin flip game. They're playing at home. We'll see what happens. I just wanted to say that about the Chargers. Last week's game, that's a game they probably lose last year.
Right.
But because of the coaching change, a whole new coaching staff, and an improved defense, they ended up winning. They don't make the same mistakes that they did in years past. So we'll see what happens. That's the first game I believe that we disagree on. So, okay, now we come to your Dallas Cowboys. -7.5. Giants coming off their first win of the season. One note I just found cool about last Sunday. Sunday was the first time in NFL or in history or in 12 years, first time, I shouldn't say in history, first time in 12 years that all the New York teams, the Giants, the Jets, and the Yankees won on the same day. And that same year, 9 years ago, the Jets had Mark Sanchez, and they went to 12 years ago, the Jets had Mark Sanchez.